Okay, let's just jump right in. Usually when we sit down to do a deep dive on the Federal Reserve, you and I both know we have to do a lot of work just to keep it interesting.
We do. There's a certain heaviness to it.
Exactly. The mental image is always the same,
Yeah.
right? It's gray suits, it's mahogany tables, it's these incredibly dry charts.
And a language that feels intentionally obscure, you know, basis points, quantitative tightening, transitory inflation.
It all feels so distant. It feels, well, let's be honest, most of the time it feels boring.
And to be fair, boring has historically been the entire point. Central banking is supposed to be the plumbing of the economy.
Right.
If the plumbing is in the headlines, it usually means your house is flooding. Stability sort of requires a certain level of dullness.
I completely agree. But today, today we are throwing boring completely out the window because the story of the next potential Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, it's not just a story about interest rates.
Not at all.
It's a saga. It honestly reads less like an economics textbook and more like a season of, I don't know, Succession or something.
Yeah. That's a great comparison.
We are talking about a dynasty that controls the global cosmetics industry. We're talking about high-stakes art collecting that would make museum curators blush.
And a friendship, a 60-year friendship with Donald Trump.
A friendship that predates the moon landing. And I still can't believe this is part of the story. A secret plot to buy the entire island of Greenland.
It really does sound like a screenplay, doesn't it? But you have to see that underneath all that, all that drama is a very, very serious signal.
What's the signal?
We are looking at a potential regime change in how the global economy is managed. This is not just swapping one person for another.
Right, so we're looking at this figure who gets called the Golden Boy, Kevin Warsh. All right. He became the youngest Federal Reserve governor in history. I think he was 36.
36 years old. Unheard of.
And now he's poised to take over the most powerful financial institution on the planet. But the mission for our deep dive today is to look past the resume. We need to map out this massive, almost invisible web behind him.
That web is absolutely the key. It's not just about professional networking. This is about deep dynastic wealth and influence. Specifically, we have to unpack his relationship with his father-in-law, Ronald Lauder.
Ronald Lauder.
And how that connection, that one single connection, might fundamentally alter the Fed's footprint in the economy.
I am so ready for the gossip elements of this, the art, the billions, the family dynamics. I know you're going to keep us grounded, though, in what this actually means for, our wallets.
That's always the goal. We can enjoy the story, but we have to understand the consequences. And speaking of consequences and what's happening in the markets, before we really get into the weeds, I think it's worth mentioning a tool for our listeners. We are going to be talking about some massive shifts in economic philosophy today.
Huge shifts.
So if you want to track the total market temperature while we're discussing these macro themes, I'd suggest you search and download the iOS app Buffett Indicator from the Apple App Store.
The Buffett Indicator, okay.
It's just a fantastic way to visualize some of the valuation metrics that are, going to be at the heart of this whole discussion.
That's an essential tool for anyone trying to follow the big picture. Okay, let's do it. Section 1, the candidate. Who is Kevin Warsh?
So let's start with the absolute basics. Kevin Warsh was born around 1970, which puts him at about 55 years old today. But if you look at photos of him, he has this perennial youthfulness.
He does. He has that sort of Kennedy-esque thing going on, the hair, the energy. He doesn't look like a standard weather and central banker who's been staring at charts for 40 years.
Not at all. And he's from Albany, New York. And this is a really crucial distinction to make right off the bat.
Why Albany?
Because once we start talking about his in-laws, the Lauder family, people just assume he was born into this stratosphere of wealth. He wasn't.
Okay.
He comes from a middle-class Jewish family. His father was a businessman, successful, but not, an oligarch. He didn't inherit a bank. He didn't inherit a cosmetics empire, at least not by birth. He initially made his way purely on merit.
Yeah, the research notes we looked at use this really interesting analogy to describe his path. They compared the idea of the red second generation with the meritocrat. Can you break that down for us?
It's a fascinating sociological comparison. So in some political systems, like the red second generation they reference in China, you have people who rise to power almost entirely because their parents were revolutionary leaders.
They inherit the name, the network, the authority.
Exactly. They get a golden ticket. In the U.S., we have our own version of that. The children of massive capital, the scions of industry, the heirs to fortunes.
The people who, as they say, are born on third base and think they hit a triple.
Sometimes, yes. But Warsh is a hybrid. And that's what makes him so formidable. He starts with extremely high individual merit. He's clearly brilliant.
Okay, so where does that start?
It starts at Stanford University, which, for the West Coast elite and especially for the modern financial and tech worlds, is basically the equivalent of Harvard or Yale.
It's the Ivy of the West.
It is. And he wasn't just another student there hiding in the library. He was the student body president.
Okay, that tells you something about a person.
It signals a very specific personality type, doesn't it? Highly ambitious, comfortable with politics, good at working a room, can build a coalition. He's a born high achiever.
So that's the merit part, the engine.
That's the engine. But then he combines that personal capability with what our source material calls a super marriage.
A super marriage.
He marries into the absolute top tier of the American elite, which accelerates his access to power far, far beyond what his resume alone could ever justify.
So it's like he built a really good engine himself, but the marriage provided the rocket fuel.
That is a perfect way to put it, the absolute perfect analogy. But before we get to the marriage, we have to look at his early career, because that's what really shaped his brain, his entire worldview.
Where did he go after Stanford?
He worked under Stanley Druckenmiller.
The billionaire financier. A total legend in the hedge fund world.
A titan. And to understand Warsh, you really have to understand Druckenmiller. The research makes this brilliant distinction between Druckenmiller and his even more famous former partner, George Soros.
They worked together on that famous trade, right? Breaking the Bank of England.
They did. But they are completely different animals. Soros is described as a political philosopher gambler.
What does that mean, a political philosopher gambler?
It means he bets on the narrative. He bets on how he thinks the world should be or how he sees the grand sociopolitical tides turning. He's looking at the big story, the philosophical arc of history.
Okay, so he's a macro storyteller.
Exactly. Druckenmiller, on the other hand, is described as a cold-blooded surgeon.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It is. He doesn't care about the story. He dissects the market as it actually is. He cares about the plumbing, the mechanics, the flows of capital, the price action.
So no narrative, just numbers and flows.
Just the raw mechanics. He's famous for being ruthless about cutting his losses and pressing his advantages when he's right. Warsh learned at the feet of the surgeon. So when he looks at the economy, he's not viewing it through a stuffy academic lens. He's viewing it through a trader's lens.
Which has to be a huge advantage when you're dealing with a crisis.
A massive advantage. And that explains his meteoric rise. They called him the Doogie Howser of the Fed, right?
That was the nickname. I remember that. He was appointed to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors in 2006. He was 36 years old.
36.
I mean, at 36, most people are just trying to figure out their 401k, maybe pay off some student loans. He's voting on interest rates for the global superpower. It's just mind-boggling.
It was completely unheard of. The typical path is you spend decades in academia, you write 10 incredibly dull books on monetary theory, and then maybe in your late 50s or 60s, you get the call.
And you're telling me Warsh wasn't just there to, get coffee for the older governors?
Not even close. He arrived, and then almost immediately the world fell apart.
The 2008 financial crisis.
Exactly. And that crisis is where he made his name. He became indispensable to Ben Bernanke, the chair at the time.
Why? What did he bring that Bernanke didn't have?
Well, you have to remember, Bernanke was a brilliant academic. His life's work was studying the Great Depression. He knew the theory inside and out. But when the 2008 crisis hit, it wasn't a theoretical problem anymore.
It was real. The plumbing was breaking.
The plumbing was exploding. The banks were freezing up. Wall Street was in a state of absolute panic. Bernanke knew the history books. Warsh knew the people. He knew the traders. He knew the bank CEOs. He spoke their language.
He could translate the chaos.
Perfectly put. He was the translator between the ivory tower of the Fed and the trading pits of Wall Street.
I love that anecdote from our research about his time at the Fed during the crash. Apparently, the phrase that was just buzzing around the hallways of the Eccles building was, "This is important, but have you grieved Kevin Warsh?"
That's the definition of soft power, isn't it? When the chairman of the Federal Reserve needs you to explain what's happening, you effectively hold the keys to the kingdom.
And Warsh played it so smart. Our sources say he would introduce himself to members of Congress or to foreign dignitaries as Bernanke's assistant.
Can you believe that? It's such a power move.
It's the ultimate power move. It's false humility. Oh, don't mind little old me. I'm just the assistant here.
It completely disarms people. It lowers their guard. It massively downplays his own influence while he's in the room, literally shaping the rescue packages for the entire global economy. It just shows a very, very high level of emotional intelligence and political savvy.
Okay, so we've established the picture. He's a brilliant, ambitious guy who understands the market inside and out. But now we have to talk about that rocket fuel we mentioned earlier.
We do.
Section 2, the power marriage. Because Kevin Warsh's wife isn't just a supportive partner standing in the background, she's an absolute industry titan in her own right.
This is what changes the entire calculus of his life and his career. Kevin Warsh is married to Jane Lauder.
As in the Estee Lauder.
The granddaughter of Estee Lauder herself. This is American royalty. The cosmetics dynasty.
But again, like with Warsh, the story is more complex. She isn't just a socialite living off a trust fund.
Not at all. She followed a very similar path to Kevin, actually. She went to Stanford, and right after she graduated in 1995, she joined the family business.
She went to work.
She went to work, and she climbed the ladder. She didn't just get a fancy title. She eventually became the global brand president of Clinique.
I honestly didn't realize this until I read these notes. Clinique is actually the single largest division of the entire Estée Lauder companies.
It's massive. It's the engine of the whole enterprise. And she has said in interviews that running Clinique was her dream job, so she's a very serious, very capable executive.
But when we talk about the wealth, I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
Yeah.
What's her personal valuation estimated at?
The estimates are around $2.7 billion.
$2.7 billion.
And you contrast that with Kevin coming from a successful but, recognizably middle-class background. It's a true collision of classes.
It really is.
Think about the upbringings. Kevin grew up going to public schools in upstate New York. Jane grew up in the most expensive, exclusive private schools on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Literally different worlds, different stratospheres.
Completely. And they met at Stanford, which really is the great equalizer for the modern elite, isn't it? It's where these worlds can collide. They married in 2002.
And the wedding. Where did this union of merit and dynasty take place?
At one of the Lauder family estates in Palm Beach, Florida. And I say estate, but you should really picture it as a compound. A sprawling 1920s colonial masterpiece inherited from Estée herself.
And the location of that estate is more than just a piece of trivia for a society column.
Oh, it's a geopolitical coordinate. That's the best way to describe it. That estate is just 4 kilometers, about 2.5 miles, from a private club called Mar-a-Lago.
And there it is. The physical proximity to Donald Trump. Almost poetic.
It's the perfect transition. It brings us directly to Section 3, the kingmaker, Ronald Lauder.
Jane's father. Kevin's father-in-law.
This guy. Ronald Lauder seems to be the key that unlocks this entire story. If you really want to understand why Kevin Warsh is the frontrunner for the Fed chairmanship, you have to look at Ronald.
So what's his story? The numbers first.
His personal wealth is estimated at around $5.1 billion. But, and this is the crucial part, his most valuable asset isn't his money.
What is it then?
It's his friendship. He has been friends with Donald Trump for over 60 years.
60 years. Just let that sink in. That's longer than most marriages last. It's longer than the entire political careers of most senators.
They met at the University of Pennsylvania at the Wharton School. Ronald is 2 years older than Trump. He was born in 1944, Trump in 1946. They were college buddies.
So this isn't a political friendship of convenience. This is deep.
This is foundational. They've been in each other's orbit for their entire adult lives. They speak the same language. They came up in the same world of New York real estate and high society in the 70s and 80s. They understand each other on a gut level.
And Ronald, he isn't just a businessman, content to stay in the background. He's been playing the political game for a long time.
Since the Reagan era, he served in the Pentagon as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO policy.
There's a great character witness from that time that we found, Colin Powell.
Yes, this is a fantastic little detail. Colin Powell was an assistant to the defense secretary back then, and he noted that whenever the American delegation traveled to Europe for these high-level meetings, everyone just naturally deferred to Ronald Lauder on all matters of culture and pleasure.
So, Ronald, where are we eating tonight?
Exactly. Ronald, which wine should we order with dinner? Ronald, which hotel is the best one to stay at? He was the official arbiter of taste, the sophisticated New Yorker among all the military brass and policy wonks.
But he clearly had higher ambitions than just picking restaurants. He became the ambassador to Austria in 1986.
He did, but it was a very short and controversial tenure, only about 18 months. And the reason why tells you a lot about his character and his stubbornness.
What happened in Austria?
The Austrian president at the time was a man named Kurt Waldheim. And it came out that Waldheim had a Nazi past. He had served in the Wehrmacht during World War II.
Oh, wow.
And Ronald Lauder, being Jewish and representing the United States, made a decision. He refused to attend Waldheim's inauguration.
Wait, he boycotted the head of state of the country where he was the ambassador?
He did. He took an incredibly hard line. It made his diplomatic position almost impossible, but he stood on principle. He said he would not, under any circumstances, normalize a man with that history.
That's a very strong move. That takes guts.
Yeah.
So what happens after that?
He comes back to New York and decides, I want to be mayor. He runs in the 1989 race.
This is a classic story, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lesson in political economics and maybe a little bit of hubris.
A huge lesson. He ran for mayor of New York City in the Republican primary, and he spent $14 million of his own money.
$14 million
Yeah.
in 1989 dollars. That is an absolute fortune for a local election back then.
It was an astronomical sum. And he lost. He lost badly in the primary to Rudy Giuliani.
Do we know the math on that loss? Because I remember hearing it was brutal.
It's absolutely brutal. He received about 9,000 votes in total. So if you do the division, the cost per vote was around $1,500.
Well, that hurts. Imagine walking up to a voter on the street, handing them $1,500 in cash, asking them to vote for you, and they still say no.
That's essentially what happened. And the takeaway for Lauder was a very hard, very expensive lesson.
Which was?
Money doesn't always buy votes directly. You can't just brute force a democracy with your checkbook. But he learned that money buys influence in other, more subtle ways. It buys art. It buys access. It shapes culture. And that kind of influence can be just as powerful, if not more so, than actually holding elected office.
Speaking of art, this brings us to section 4, the art world. And this is probably my favorite part of the research because it gives us such a clear glimpse into the psychology of the man who's backing Kevin Warsh.
It really does.
Ronald Lauder isn't just a guy with a few nice paintings hanging over his sofa.
No, he is what's known as a jewel box collector. He is a world-class obsessive collector. He owns the Newey Gallery in Manhattan, right there on Museum Mile at 5th Avenue and 86th Street.
Why do they call it a jewel box?
Because it's not the Met, it's not MoMA. It doesn't have thousands and thousands of pieces. It's small, it's exquisite, and every single piece is unbelievably high-end. It specializes in early 20th century German and Austrian art.
And the centerpiece of that entire collection is the famous Woman in Gold.
Gustav Klimt's portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer I. In 2006, Lauder bought this painting for $135 million.
Just a casual $135 million.
At the time, that was the highest price ever paid for a painting at auction or in a private sale. It beat a record set by a Picasso. He considers it his personal Mona Lisa.
Why that specific painting? What's the obsession?
Well, it's visually stunning, for one. It's covered in gold leaf, it shimmers. But Lauder calls it a living painting. He compares it to Klimt's other famous work, The Kiss, which hangs in a museum in Vienna. He says, the kiss feels static, like a beautiful object.
But the Woman in Gold is different.
It has a story. It has a soul. It was stolen by the Nazis during the war, and then there was a decades-long legal battle by the family to reclaim it. It has a narrative, and Ronald Lauder loves a narrative.
I love his philosophy on collecting, the 3 O's. Can you explain that?
This is both hilarious and incredibly telling about his mindset. Lauder says he categorizes all art into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is O. Just a flat acknowledgement. Oh, that's a painting on the wall. Yeah. Completely underwhelming.
Okay, tier 2.
Tier 2 is, oh, nice. A pleasant reaction. You know, you might hang it in a best room. It's polite appreciation.
And tier 3 is the one that matters.
Tier 3 is, oh my God. And he says he only buys the oh my God pieces.
That is the ultimate billionaire flex, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't make me physically gasp, I'm not interested.
And he actually added a 4th category later in life, which I think shows his ambition even more. The 4th category is, oh my God, pieces that are already in museums.
The ones he can't have.
The ones he can't have yet. He covets the impossible.
He does. And that brings us to the negotiation stories. The story about the Matisse painting, the yellow curtain. This story actually gave me chills when I read it.
It's incredible. It illustrates the Lauder style, and frankly, the Trump style, too. It's the same DNA.
So walk us through it.
Lauder wanted this very specific Matisse painting. It was owned by a private collector in Brussels. Lauder flies to Brussels to meet the owner and make an offer. The owner refuses to sell. He says, I love this painting. It is a part of me. I want to be buried with it.
That's a pretty firm, that's about as firm as it gets. I want to be buried with it.
Most people would respect that. They'd say, okay, I understand, and they would leave. Not Ronald Lauder. He reportedly looked at the man and asked, more or less, how is your health? When might that be?
No, he did not say that.
The implication was clear. Even if the words weren't that explicit, the pressure was absolute. He was essentially saying, I will outlive you. I will wait. And sure enough, the moment that owner passed away and the painting was passed to an heir, Lauder swooped in and bought it immediately.
That is absolutely relentless. It's almost predatory.
It's the art of the deal. You push and you push until you get what you want. You find the leverage and you apply it without mercy. And this shared mindset between Lauder and Trump leads us to perhaps the single weirdest story in this entire stack of research.
I'm ready.
Section 5, the Greenland incident.
Oh, this is the best part. I remember when this story hit the news. The president of the United States wants to buy Greenland. Everyone thought it was a joke. The internet memes were just incredible for days.
It wasn't a joke. And here is the scoop from our sources that connects this whole universe together. The idea did not originate with Donald Trump. It originated with Ronald Lauder.
Wait, are you serious? The cosmetics billionaire and art collector suggested buying a sovereign part of another country.
Yes. According to the reports, Lauder was the one who pitched it to Trump. He told him about the historical connections. The U.S. has looked at buying Greenland before, back under Truman. He talked about the immense strategic value in the Arctic against China and Russia.
And he didn't just give him the idea.
No, this is the key part. He offered himself, Ronald Lauder, as the secret back-channel negotiator with the Danish government to make the deal happen.
He wanted to be the broker for buying a country.
He wanted to broker the biggest real estate deal in history. Now, look at the reaction inside the White House. The national security advisor at the time, John Bolton, who is a very serious, hawkish guy, not exactly a dove, he thought the whole idea was delusional.
A reasonable reaction.
He set up a team to look into, leasing some land for a military base or getting more strategic footing. Standard diplomatic and military stuff.
But Trump didn't want to lease?
No. Trump sided with Lauder, the businessman, over Bolton, the bureaucrat. He wanted to buy the deed. He told his advisors, and this is a quote, "It's just like getting a store to move into a building I'm building."
Oh my God. He viewed Greenland as an anchor tenant for a new mall.
Precisely. It is a real estate developer's mindset applied to global geopolitics. The reports also say that Trump keeps a portrait of President James Polk in the Oval Office.
Why James Polk?
Because Polk is the one who acquired California, Arizona, and New Mexico from Mexico for $15 million after the Mexican-American War. Trump apparently views territorial acquisition as the ultimate presidential legacy. He wanted his Polk moment.
But the connection here to Kevin Warsh is absolutely vital. This isn't just a funny story.
It is the smoking gun of influence. This story proves that Donald Trump trusts Ronald Lauder's instincts implicitly. He trusts them even when they seem completely crazy to his own top national security advisors.
So if Lauder says buy Greenland, Trump tries to buy Greenland.
And if Lauder says my son-in-law Kevin is the only man who can fix the Federal Reserve, that endorsement carries more weight than any resume, any PhD from MIT, or any recommendation from the entire banking establishment combined.
That is both terrifying and fascinating. It means Warsh has the ultimate unshakable endorsement.
It does, and that brings us to the battlefield itself. Section 6, Warsh versus the current Fed, because we have to look at the context of why this nomination is even on the table.
The context is that Trump's relationship with the current chair, Jerome Powell, is, well, it's completely broken.
Broken is putting it very, very politely. They are not on speaking terms.
Trump has publicly insulted Powell over and over again.
Constantly. He's called him a mule. He's called him stupid. He's called him Mr. Slow.
Mr. Slow, where did that come from?
Because in Trump's view, Powell was too slow to cut interest rates. Trump wants cheap money. He wants the economy roaring and the stock market ripping higher, especially in an election year. Powell kept rates high to fight inflation. Trump views that as a personal betrayal.
And now there's this scandal brewing too, right? Something about a building renovation.
This appears to be the leverage point. The source material we reviewed mentions a potential criminal investigation by the Department of Justice into the Federal Reserve building renovation in Washington.
We have a specific issue they're looking at.
A massive budget overrun. The budget for the renovation apparently jumped from $1.9 billion to $2.5 billion.
That's a $600 million overrun. That's a huge number.
It is. But in large-scale government work, cost overruns are, frankly, quite common. The key here is framing it as a criminal matter. That's not an accounting issue. That's political hardball.
It's a weapon.
It's a weapon. It's designed to weaken Powell's standing, to question his competence as a manager, and to perhaps force him to resign, or at least humiliate him on his way out the door. It creates a vacuum.
A vacuum for a replacement. Enter Kevin Warsh. But here's the part that's confusing for me, and I think for a lot of our listeners. Warsh is known in economic circles as a hawk.
That's right. He's an inflation hawk.
And a hawk usually means someone who hates inflation and likes to keep interest rates high to keep prices stable. Trump loves low interest rates. Isn't that a direct fundamental conflict?
Yeah, it is the billion-dollar question. And this is where you see how clever Warsh is in his public positioning. He was previously considered for Treasury Secretary, but he's really a Fed guy at heart. He has been walking a very, very careful tightrope.
How so? What has he been doing?
For one, he has publicly downplayed the inflationary risks of Trump's proposed tariffs. Most economists, left and right, will tell you that big tariffs cause prices to go up. It's basic economics. Warsh has said, not necessarily.
So he's aligning with the president on a key policy point.
He's also a strong supporter of banking deregulation, which is another core part of the Trump agenda. He's signaling, I'm on your team, I understand your goals, we're aligned.
So he's saying all the right things to get the job.
He's playing the political game masterfully. But deep down, if you look at his actual economic track record and his writings, he is a sound money guy. He absolutely loathes quantitative easing.
Okay, let's pause and find that for everyone. We hear QE all the time. What is it? in simple terms?
Quantitative easing is basically when the central bank, the Fed, creates new money electronically. They don't even have to print it. And they use that new money to buy bonds from commercial banks.
And what does that do?
It injects massive amounts of cash, of liquidity into the financial system. It's like giving a shot of adrenaline to a tired runner. It wakes them up, it pushes interest rates down, it boosts asset prices like stocks and real estate.
But Warsh believes it's a dangerous drug.
He believes it's a dangerous drug that distorts reality. He argues it primarily helps Wall Street and the wealthy because they own the assets that go up in price. And it hurts Main Street and the poor by eventually driving up the cost of living and causing inflation. He thinks it's a corruption of what the Fed is supposed to do.
So Warsh wants to turn off the money printer for good.
He wants to smash the money printer with a sledgehammer.
Wow. So, Section 7. The future of the Fed under Warsh. If he gets the job, what does the world actually look like?
He has stated publicly that he wants a radical difference. That is a direct quote from him. He said, "I don't think we need policy continuity. That continuity brought about the greatest mistake in macroeconomic policy in 45 years.
He's talking about the massive inflation spike we saw after the pandemic. He's blaming Powell and Yellen for that.
He is. He wants to completely clean house. He wants to break from the Yellen and Powell era of easy money and break from it decisively.
So what are his main missions? What's on the to-do list for day one?
He has 3 very clear and very difficult missions. First, shrink the Fed's balance sheet. The Fed is currently sitting on about $6.6 trillion of assets it bought during all those years of QE. Warsh thinks that is dangerously large. He wants to sell those assets off.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It is unbelievably risky. If you sell those assets too fast, you are essentially doing quantitative tightening on steroids. You suck liquidity out of the market. Stocks could crash. Bonds could crash. The housing market could freeze. It's like trying to defuse a nuclear bomb.
Okay, that's mission 1. Mission 2.
Crush inflation. Get it back to the 2% target and bolt it to the floor. No excuses, no talk of transitory. Just get it done.
And mission 3. This seems like the hardest one.
Maintain independence. Or at least maintain the appearance of independence. He has to accomplish these very harsh, very painful economic goals without looking like he's just taking direct orders from his father-in-law's best friend in the Oval Office. He has to maintain the credibility of the US dollar on the world stage.
He has this interesting view on the Fed's role in society. He wants to make it boring again.
Yes. This is central to his philosophy. He believes the Fed has suffered from mission creep over the last couple of decades.
What does he mean by mission creep?
You have Fed officials giving speeches about climate change, about racial inequality, about social justice. Warsh thinks that is not their job. He believes the Fed should be a boring, apolitical monitor of the currency, a sound money watchdog, and nothing more.
So he wants the Fed chair to be someone you read about in history books 50 years from now, not someone who's on the nightly news every other day.
Exactly. He used a fantastic phrase in one of his essays. He said the Fed should not be a repair shop for failed fiscal policy.
A repair shop for failed fiscal policy. What does that mean?
It means that if Congress and the president spend way too much money, run up the national debt, and create economic problems, it's not the Fed's job to just turn on the money printer and bail them out.
That sounds incredibly disciplined. But it also sounds potentially very painful for the average person, right?
It could be extremely painful in the short term. Ending the era of easy money is like taking a powerful drug addict off their supply cold turkey. The withdrawal symptoms are real and they are severe. Markets might crash. Unemployment might have to rise as businesses lose access to that cheap credit.
And Warsh seems willing to administer that medicine.
He seems willing to take that medicine. The real question is, will a President Trump, who wants a booming stock market, actually let him do it?
That is the central tension, isn't it? You have the golden boy with the hawkish sound money brain, backed by the most powerful political connection imaginable.
And that leads us perfectly to our synthesis. We have a nominee who is, by all accounts, intellectually brilliant Stanford, Morgan Stanley Fed governor, but he is also, for all intents and purposes, political royalty through this Lauder and Trump connection. He represents the potential end of the QE era, the end of easy money as we've known it for 15 years.
It's just a fascinating contradiction. He says he wants to make the Fed smaller, quieter, more boring, but he's backed by the loudest, most deal-driven, most disruptive figures in the entire world.
Precisely. And that's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today. Warsh says he wants a boring, smaller Fed, a Fed that steps back. But think about who is backing him. Ronald, buy the Matisse or else Lauder. Donald, let's buy Greenland. Trump. These are not men of subtlety. These are men of big, brash, unexpected moves.
So the question is,
Can a man who is a product of the art of the deal ecosystem really run a boring central bank? Or will the Greenland style of ambitious, unexpected deal-making maneuvering become the new normal for the Federal Reserve? Will we start to see the Fed trying to pull off deals instead of just setting interest rates?
that is a terrifying, and I have to admit, a weirdly exhilarating thought. It might not be boring at all.
I have a strong suspicion it won't be.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive, but before we sign off, we need to do the necessary housekeeping.
Right. Transparency is always key. Full, deep value research reports on this topic and others can be found in the description links. All the analysis we've discussed is based on publicly available sources and may be subject to revisions or, of course, differing interpretations.
And remember, this content is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice. Please conduct your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
And if you want to listen to our full deep dive about this topic or you want to access more advanced contents, you're welcome to join the Deep Value Club membership or subscribe to us on deepvalues.ai.
And don't forget to like this video. It is much appreciated.
And finally, a reminder. To track total market temperature, especially in volatile times like these, welcome to search and download the iOS app Buffett Indicator from the Apple App Store.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.